Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm back with the next Marvel calendar. It is the Marvel Comics calendar for 1980, the Occult World of Doctor Strange. Now, in the previous calendar episodes, I've gone over the calendars for 75, 76, 77, 78, and 79. And starting in 78, they started doing calendars about individual characters. So we get Spider-Man in 78, makes sense, most popular character at Marvel. 79, we get the Hulk, makes sense, has a hit TV show. 1980, we get Doctor Strange. His comic is bi-monthly at this point, one of their lowest selling titles. There was a TV movie that had come out in the late 70s, but it didn't go anywhere. And I have no earthly conception why they ended up doing a Doctor Strange calendar of all the things, all the characters, all the franchises, all the properties they had. Why Doctor Strange? I don't know, but I'm glad they did because I love Doctor Strange, and this has some awesome artwork in it. And as always, some of these pieces of art are by people you are not expecting to be working on Doctor Strange. Now, that comes at the expense of some of the people you would expect to work on Doctor Strange. So, for instance, there's no artwork in here by Frank Brunner. So by 1980, he wasn't really, I guess, doing that much of Marvel anymore because he's not in this. Which is too bad because, of course, Frank Brunner, classic artist on Doctor Strange. But there is some great stuff. Let me start with the covers because they're fantastic. And we start off here with the awesome front cover. Check this out. Any guesses who the artist is? It's Dave Cockrum. Dave Cockrum doing his best Doctor Strange, and I have to say his best Doctor Strange is a really good Doctor Strange. Huh? Great cover. And then the back cover. Now this is going to be particularly interesting for Doctor Strange, hardcore Doctor Strange fans. Because it is by the team of Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. What's really interesting about this is that around this time, a little bit after this, around this time, Frank Miller was supposed to take over as the regular artist on Doctor Strange. There was a house ad that ran in Marvel hyping the new Frank Miller Doctor Strange run, and it never happened. But there were a couple pieces of artwork that he did, and this one's awesome. I'm not a big Frank Miller fan, but this is really great. So, a lot of Doctor Strange, hardcore Doctor Strange fans always wonder what would have happened if Frank Miller had taken over as the artist. And we get a little bit of a tease here on this awesome back cover. Inside, get the design. We get the credits in the shape of the big iconic window in the Sanctum Sanctorum. As always, these all have a letter from Stan Lee. This one's cool because they've drawn Stan Lee in this wackadoodle fantasy helmet. So that's fun. And then we start off here in January. And this is by Al Milgrom. Now, I've talked about Al Milgrom before. I'm not the biggest Al Milgrom fan. But he does have his moments. And what I think the issue is really with Al Milgrom is that he's a very solid storyteller and a very fast artist, I think. So the impression I get with a lot of his lesser work, which is most of his monthly interiors, is that he's drawing quickly. Like he's has to draw to a certain standard to hit the deadlines. But if he has enough time, he can really do much better work. And this is a prime example because this is one of the best Al Milgrom works I've seen. And I will say Al Milgrom's work from the 70s when he first got into comics, to me, is a lot better than his work from the 80s when he was, really doing the grind for Shooter. So really good Al Milgrom, one of the best Milgrom pieces. As always with these, what they do with them is they go kind of chronologically through the character's history. So we get Doctor Strange training, like from his first appearance. And then we get also from his first appearance. Let me back that up. His training was from his origin story, which actually wasn't in his first appearance. It's in issue 115 of Strange Tales. So when we get to February, we get to the story that takes place later in his continuity. But first for us, Strange Tales 110, where he fights Nightmare, and this is drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz with art from inking from Joe Rubinstein. Now this is before Sienkiewicz had adopted sort of his classic style that he was really known for just a couple years later in the 80s, where he really started on Moon Knight in particular, developing this new style. But this is just before that. Of course, he was drawing this in 1979. Really good, really good. Then we get the first Dormammu storyline from Strange Tales, like 126 to 40. The introduction of Cleo. This is by Pat Broderick with Bob Layton inks, but they're clearly doing their absolute best Ditko, particularly on Clea, and just the designs of everything. Really great. This calendar has some great artwork. I'm a big Doctor Strange fan, and all of these have great artwork, but this one in particular is a personal favorite of mine. Got to remember to bring it in real close so you can see the detailing. Again, Pat Broderick on the pencils here. So that's March. Then April we get Gene Colan doing Doctor Strange's Meeting Eternity in Strange Tales 146. Just awesome. Gene Colan's got a couple. He's got another one later on in here. Of course, Gene Colan, one of the great Doctor Strange artists, really knocking it out of the park here. You know, this is one where, for these calendars, usually there's certain images that I like to put up for display. But this is one where there's so many, for every month has something great, so it's hard to pick which one to go with. Now, someone you don't probably associate with Doctor Strange, it's Mike Zeck coming in May, and this is a representation of his crossover with Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 2, the all Ditko issue, where Ditko's two greatest creations meet each other for the only time while Ditko was working on the book. Again, very heavy, of course, on the Ditko influencing, but you can also see the Mike Zeckness of it all. Just really great. That's the May image. June, it's Rudy Nebrez. And he's doing the Sons of Satanish. Now, this storyline happened after the series switched from Strange Tales to Doctor Strange. So this is a storyline from around issue 175 or so. I forget exactly the number. But you can see Doctor Strange is in his civilian garb. He and Clea are walking down the street, and they're being watched by the Sons of Satanish. It is interesting, some of the creative choices on these, which emphasize like Spider-Man or the Sons of Satanish over Doctor Strange. Still really cool. And then here's an awesome image, Avengers fans. The one thing I love is that George Perez does a lot of, every one of these calendars just about has George Perez, and a lot of times he ends up doing an Avengers image, even though the calendars don't have anything to do with the Avengers. And here's one of those cases, because this is illustrating the crossover into Avengers number 61. But it's George Perez. Now, the original issue, of course, is drawn by John Buscema, and the art's fantastic. But here we have George Perez reinterpreting the Avengers and Doctor Strange fighting against Immer and Surtur, the fire giant and the frost giant. Black Knight, of course, is there as well. How cool is this? Man, I'm telling you, Avengers fans, Perez fans, you got to pick up these calendars. This was the hardest of the calendars for me to find, although the 81 calendar was also hard to find. I don't know when I'm going to get to the 81 calendar. I should just save this for the end, but the 81 calendar I had on display here. I've mentioned this before, and it fell behind my giant roll-top desk, which weighs hundreds of pounds. And so it's been stuck behind there, probably bent into a pretzel for like 3 years now, or longer, because it fell off the wall pretty soon after we moved in here. It might be 4 years since it fell, and I've just not been able to get to it. I have figured out a plan of how to get to it, but it involves rearranging the whole room. So I don't know when I'm going to get to the last of these Marvel calendars, but in the meantime, here's Keith Pollard with Joe Sinnott doing the premiere of The Defenders from Marvel Feature number 1. Really cool art. Now that's for August. September, it's Ernie Cologne, I think. Just guessing based on where the emphasis is. This is Doctor Strange fighting Baron Mordo, and they're in a prehistoric. I think this is Sisneg. I'm not sure, but I think this is. I've only read that storyline once, but I'm pretty sure this is from the end of Marvel Premiere, his run on Marvel Premiere, which ended in issue 14. They went back in time, and Sisneg was sort of showing them the origins of the universe. It's cool. It's not my favorite in this calendar, though, because some of these other ones are just so great. October, it's John Byrne with Terry Austin, and this is doing their interpretation of the fight against Silver Dagger, which was in Doctor Strange numbers 1 through 5. I say 1 through 5. Steve Englehart, as always, not great with the deadlines, so one of those issues is actually a fill-in reprint. But, and this is the storyline where famously they have, I just blanked on what his name is. He's, I don't remember if this is Agamotto or if this is, it's one of the gods that he calls on, and he shows up as a caterpillar that's smoking a hookah, like he's from Alice in Wonderland. Very 70s, drug riff, whatever. Great storyline, but that sort of content, and I know Englehart was a big pothead, it doesn't do anything for me. But the rest of the storyline is excellent. I love the sort of border work. I think in terms of the composition, it's not the greatest for Byrne. I like things that have more of a central figure as opposed to something like this. November, and it's Gene Colan. Has to be Gene Colan for this. It's illustrating Doctor Strange's fight against Dracula. They fought a couple times, had a crossover. And of course, Gene Colan, the Dracula artist, but also one of the great Doctor Strange artists. Turn that all down so it's not quite as glary. So you can see that up close. It's tremendous, tremendous. And then finally, December. And this is really cool because it's Tom Sutton, and this is an illustration of Doctor Strange's encounter with the In-Betweener, which I forget exactly when this took place. obviously was after the crossover with Dracula. I want to say it was in Doctor Strange, like around number 25 or 30 in this series. And Tom Sutton, a perfect artist to be doing Doctor Strange, because he has that sort of magical stuff. He's got a little bit of Colin in his artwork. And these figures in the background make more sense if you've read the story. Again, I've only read this arc once. And then the inside of the back cover, we get the bullpen birthdays that weren't. This one, they've actually got this is cool. They've got photos of the people in the bullpen with a guide, so you can all the pictures of who they are. Like early picture of Mark Grunwald in number 1 from 1979, and so on and so on. And then you have the calendar of the birthdays of the Marvel staffers and stuff. So again, another awesome calendar. I think I'm going to change up which of these pictures I have on display, because I've had a certain one on display for quite a while, but some of these other ones are really cool. I think it's time for me to mix that up. And let's see, which one should I go with? I think it's going to be this one. I think we're going with this one. So this is going to go up on the wall. And that's it for the 1980 Doctor Strange calendar. Doctor Strange fans must have, absolutely must have. Don't know what they're going for these days. I haven't looked that up. But as I mentioned, this was the hardest one for me to find. I think I paid the most for this. I think I paid $30, but that was a number of years ago. Might be less now. I don't know. Maybe someone found some. But absolute must have. Totally worth it. Let me know what you think down below. Again, I don't know when I'm going to be able to do the 1981 calendar. It's not the only calendar that's fallen behind my desk, because I'll also mention that in the 70s, DC tried to get in on some of this action. They weren't nearly as successful, but they did put out 2 calendars, 1976 and 1977, I think. I have both of them, but one of them is also fallen off the wall behind this desk. So if I can dig that out, then there will not just be the 1981 Marvel calendar, but at that point I'll be able to do videos on both of the DC calendars as well. They're not nearly as good as this, but they do have some cool stuff in it anyway. So hopefully I'll be able to get those out at some point and show you that. But for now, let me know what you think down below. Tell me what your favorites are, and I'll see you next time.